welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for the month of April. We've got a great book and a fantastic guest here tonight. This is going to be a really fun conversation, I predict. The book is The Nice House on the Lake, which is was my favorite single issue last year when it came out.
Thank you.
I was so impressed by it, and I love the rest of the book as well. But that single issue really was just wow. Hi, see, there's people arriving too. Hi. And yes, I'm here with James TYNION the fourth, and my head kept telling me to say TYNION, and it's not.
It is TYNION, actually.
TYNION. There you go.
It's not how it's spelled at all.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to confuse everybody.
Yeah, it's all good because I deal with people going gay man all the time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Guy man. No.
Yeah.
It's gay man.
Yeah.
It's gay man.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, hi. So yeah, this is a fantastic book, and you guys all liked it, right? We have a crowd here. You guys liked it. Yeah, it was good. It was really good, man. So let's start with the first question, which is the same question I ask everybody. Why comics? Of all the things you could be doing, why comics?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, the biggest reason why every time I come up with a new idea, I want it to be a comic is because I can trick an incredibly talented artist to draw it, and I get to see every page as it comes in.
Yeah. And
I am a lover of comic book art, and I love the medium. I've loved the medium since I was a kid, and it's something that, my ideas come to me as comic book ideas, and it's I want to make the sorts of worlds that, I started falling into when I was in middle school and high school, and I really fell in love with the medium. And that's been my goal from day one.
How's it from middle school you wanted to write comics?
Since, I was actually just saying before we got started, one of my books right now, Wind, the young adult series I do through Boom Studios, I started coming up with that when I was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
I started carrying a binder around and just sketching out details of this world and all of this. And it was just, at the time I thought I would be an artist and was taking art classes. But, there are plenty of comic book writers out there who will be very modest and be like, oh, but then I realized I couldn't draw. But then you actually ask them to draw something and it's just oh, that's actually damn good. That won't happen if you ask me to draw something.
I know you're poop for Batman it's pretty okay.
I can do some cartoony robot Batman for you. So
that works.
Yeah.
So when was it that you knew you weren't an artist?
I mean, in high school.
In high school, okay.
It was one of those things I just did not have the patience for it. It was something where I like sitting and thinking about a world. I like sitting and thinking about the characters. And I realized that it's just okay, I wanted, I'm not going to be able to be my own artist. So at that time I was chatting with, friends on message boards and all that, trying to coerce some of them to do a web comic with me while I was in high school. And, the brief, half attempts at that have all been scrubbed from the internet for good reason. And, but it's that's really when, it all started coming together. And it was reading Sandman that really, it hit me where it's just okay, I want to pursue this as what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
And I realized that, specifically, I wanted to find the path towards writing comics. And so I looked at, but there wasn't a school that was offering, at that point, really classes in comic book writing. So it was I realized it's I thought it was okay, I'm going to learn how to write prose, and then I'm going to sort of sidestep in because that's
that's what Neil did.
That's exactly what Neil did. So that's the path that I was looking at. And then through insane luck so I went to a writing school, a school with Sarah Lawrence College just outside of New York, which has a great writing program. And through absolute chance, I noticed before my junior year there was someone in the course catalog who had written a short story in a collection of superhero-themed short stories. So it's okay, this is someone who's going to engage with the type of ideas that I like. And that's how I met Scott Snyder. and he was my writing professor. And that semester was when Vertigo and Marvel approached him for the first time and asked him to pitch. And so he started running his pitches by me. And that's, that was sort of the road that I started following in. But even then, for years, I thought I was going to try down the path of being an editor, because I didn't think I'd be able to get started as a comic book writer as young as I did. But then Scott vouched for me, and here I am.
Yeah. So you wanted to write superhero comics from the go rather than
it wasn't
more personal stuff.
It was Sandman. It was like I wanted to do something like Sandman.
Yeah.
And so at the time, it was the idea of, especially because especially the comic market at that time, creator-owned books weren't. There weren't that many creator-owned books. I wanted to write it. But I did want to at some point do one of those 10-volume runs at Vertigo. That's what I wanted. That was the pinnacle goal for me. And I was an editorial intern actually at Vertigo for about 6 months, and which was great. But that was the path that I was really after, and I love superheroes. I was an avid reader of superhero fiction, but the goal was always the 10 volumes of a Vertigo run. I knew if I got that, then I had succeeded on the path that I'd set down since I started.
If I remember correctly, and I might have my timing off, but I feel like at that point at DC, if you were an editorial, you were no longer allowed to pitch comics, right? Yeah.
But at that point, especially through Vertigo, the recent example of someone getting a chance to, Cliff Chang had been an editor at Vertigo, and then stepped away for a few years and then became Cliff Chang. So it's just he was the one I was sort of eyeing up. It's just okay, you do a run, you kind of meet everyone in editorial, and then it's just you go out, sharpen your teeth, and then come back in.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out. But I found a different one.
Yeah. Now Scott brought you in, as I recall, to write a backup story in Batman.
Yeah.
In actual Batman itself.
Yes.
So your first comic, you're doing the flagship book.
Yeah. No, and it was incredibly intimidating. And it was one of those things where the first story I did was, I was working with Raphael Albuquerque, who's a great artist, and I was telling, backstory with one of the Talons of the Court of Owls that took place in the history of Gotham, and the main character was Alfred Pennyworth's father. And I felt very comfortable doing that, where it was just okay, I'm not touching the core mythology, I'm touching the secondary mythology. That I'm allowed to do. The thing that freaked me out is that once I started turning those scripts in, then they approved me to do the Batman Annual with Scott. And I was just okay, Scott, you have to write the Batman parts. I'll write the Mr. Freeze parts. I'm fine with the Mr. Freeze parts, but you cannot make me write Batman. I'm not ready to write Batman. And then I remember Scott, very patiently just got on the phone and was James, I brought you onto this because I do not have the time to write this by myself. You have to write Batman. And it was an incredibly intimidating experience, but it was trial by fire. And and having someone like Scott who vouched for me and also was willing to tell me when my ideas were crap, and how to make each story better, which then shaped how I was able to move forward, because I also knew the moments where I disagreed with some of those notes, but it's in that moment, it's okay, this is Scott's book, I'm gonna go with the Scott thing, but then it's in the back of my mind, I like going down the weird alleyways and following the side characters. That I think became sort of the hallmark of my superhero work.
Detective was next, or was it Batman Eternal?
It was Batman Eternal, then Batman and Robin Eternal, and then Detective. Right.
Running a year-long thing.
Yeah. No, that was also incredibly intimidating. But it was a really great experience because we had this runway, and we knew like, and it like this had to happen. Like it was one of those things where they had like, and it, like, and people don't remember, there were a few weeklies that all dropped at DC around the same time, and we had, I think, the clearest agenda of like, okay, this is what we want the book to be. This is like how we're going to play with all of these different figures in around, and we also were delivering the thing that a bunch of people have been wanting since the start of the New 52, which is actually seeing the connectivity between the Bat family members, which had kind of been erased by the launch of the New 52 in a big way. So it was just like, how do we deliver that? How do we tell like a big bombastic story that you want to pick up every single week? And it was a tremendous amount of work, and just keeping it all organized was a tremendous amount of work. But it was really thrilling getting in a room and breaking story with Scott and the entire team there was like, it was incredibly gratifying because it's like once it launched and people were really, really excited and they really engaged with that one. And then it all like positioned me very well on the other end of 2 weekly comics. Most of my friends were freaking out because DC had announced at the start of Rebirth they were going to go double ship on all of these titles, and I was the only person stepping down from a weekly to a double ship rather than going up from a monthly to a double ship. So I was just like, all right, I can relax. Now I can take my time and tell a nice big story. But and Detective is still, I think, the purest me, Bat book that I did.
Yeah.
It is the one because I focused on all the side characters.
Right.
I focused on the supporting cast of Gotham and Gotham itself and the legacy of Batman, which has always been, frankly, more interesting to me than, Batman himself. Like, I think there are great stories to tell with Batman himself, but I also think my strengths as a writer lie in ensemble casts. I like team books, and even when I'm writing like a solo book, I tend to turn it into a team book because that's it's fun switching between the storylines and the different characters. It's easier to create tension and play scenes off of each other, and I don't know. It's like the pacing feels more like what I am trying to get out of superhero book with a large cast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You use the DC universe quite well there. I'm really intrigued though, because when you went on to Batman itself, it seemed to me that you decided that the best way to focus your energy was to create new characters.
Yeah,
which is a great thing to do. It brought a lot of energy to the book. But I'm wondering why you leaned into that, if only because the history of comics shows that people don't get the proper respect for creating the characters, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, when I stepped onto Batman, there were a few things that were all happening. I was picking it up after Tom King's run, which had been a run that was very it dug into the psychological side of Batman. Yeah. It was a slower pace of storytelling. It was more it was emotional, and it was about character moments and all of this stuff. And I knew that I had to, and I knew that I'd be coming onto it, and I knew that I'd be coming onto the book. I knew that while I was on that book, there was going to be a Batman Catwoman series that was going to be running alongside it, that was going to continue that relationship out of continuity, but it was going to be running in comic shops. I knew that later in the year, Batman 3 Jokers was going to be coming out through Black Label once again. Even though, the thing that I'd been told was to do a Joker event. And I knew that I was going to have to, and I knew that I was on the title through issue 100, and then that was going to be the end of my Batman run. That's what I was told going in. So it's just I had this opportunity where I was picking up one of the flagship titles of comics. Like, this is the, you know, there isn't like, you know, the only AAA comic that comes close is Amazing Spider-Man. And it's just like, I had an opportunity here to do something that tried to catch people's attention. And I knew I had to define myself. And, you know, one thing that was freeing is I'd already written, you know, 200 plus issues of various Batman comics by the time I took over the title. So it wasn't something that I was particularly precious about. Like, I need the chance to tell my blank story. Like, I wasn't trying to fulfill that. Like, all of my like fanboy Gotham stuff, I had done all of that in Detective. So coming on to Batman, I wanted to, you know, really dig into, like, I wanted to define myself against what Tom had been doing by going very high octane. I wanted it to be like gadgets in every issue. I wanted it to be like, you know, bright, colorful characters. The way I started thinking of it is that if my Detective Comics run was me doing Claremont X-Men, you know, my Batman run was going to be me doing 90s X-Men. And it's like, literally, I went through and I was looking at, like, I got that Jim Lee XXL, you know, and I was like flipping through the pages and just trying to like absorb. It's like, okay, look at every page. You have brightly colorful characters in every corner of the page. And it just is, it's exciting to look at every single page of the book. And, you know, I knew I wanted to sort of bring, you know, bring some new characters into it. And I did, even in my first issue, even though those two characters didn't really like pick up steam. But it was the, you know, once Jorge Jimenez wrapped, he was still wrapping his last issues of the Justice League run with Scott Snyder, but he was going to be, you know, doing a one-shot in the middle of my first arc, and then he was going to be doing the second arc, Joker War. And so he was free to do design work. And I threw him the design for a character that I wanted to bring into this story, Punchline. And the design he brought back was just like a absolutely stunning design. But at that moment, like, you know, DC wasn't like, you know, there wasn't really a means of even like telling anyone that we had this. So I ended up putting it out through my newsletter. And that's the moment that, you know, a lot of eyes started turning towards the book. And once I saw that there was an excitement there, I had all of these ideas that I had been sort of sitting on, that, you know, using my old instincts that, you know, rather than putting everything up front, I was going to like, okay, I'll set up some threads in this, you know, Joker War, and then maybe I'll ask DC if they'll give me a mini series in, you know, 5G on the other side of 100, and I might be able to like introduce a character like Clown Hunter. Originally that character was me pitching for the other side, and it was just like, no, I'm going to take it in. I'm going to introduce this character here and now because there's heat here, and it's also, and I have Jorge Jimenez, who's one of the best character designers working in the business right now, and I just want to lean into that excitement. And once I started really working with Jorge, I felt the energy of the book, and I knew what I wanted it to be, and I just leaned in. And I leaned all the way in. To the point that even once we got the okay, once we realized that we weren't going to end with 100, we had free reign to continue for another year. My idea for year 2 was, it's just like, you know, I was like imagining the movie poster, or like, you know, a poster in a comic shop, like one of those classic like Jim Lee 90s, you know, X-Men posters, where it's just like, imagine you saw like Batman, Harley Quinn, and some other cool-looking hero surrounded by a bunch of badass-looking villains you've never seen before, and then it was Scarecrow looming over it. And that was the initial image that came into my mind for Fear State. And it's just like, that, to me, that felt like that's how you tell people that the main Batman title is still an important title to read. Like, because you aren't going to get the stories of any of these characters if you pick up the video games or the, like, you know, movies or all of that stuff, because, you know, they're being introduced to you right now. So it's just like, if you want to be on the ground floor, if you want to meet these characters for the first time with everyone else, then you better be picking up the monthly issues of Batman.
Yeah. No, I get all that. I think my question was more, as a freelancer working for DC, or working for any place where you don't control the content, it's not as though you're going to get the benefit. You got the benefit from a book that did extraordinarily well, right? But if they ever make a Punchline movie, you're going to get a special thanks to on the screen, but.
Sure.
Right?
Like,
I mean,
100%. But it's like, I walked into it knowing that.
Yeah.
And then also, Punchline doesn't exist without Batman or the Joker.
Right.
Or Harley Quinn.
Right.
So it's one of those things where in creating a character, like, and looking at each of the characters I created, it was one of those things where, and this is more true in the first year. In the second year, I went a little further afield, but it was in the first year I had, that we had Punchline, who is a character who only works in like a late stage Batman continuity because she requires the long-term existence of both the Joker and Harley Quinn and all of this. This is someone who, similar to it's the next generation who grew up idolizing the Joker. And it's just like, that is a character that only works in Batman comics. And then you have the flip side of that in Clown Hunter, where here's the next generation of Gotham City, and since they were a kid, they've been waiting for Batman to stop the Joker, and he hasn't stopped the Joker, so now they're going to take it into their own hands.
Right.
That requires Batman and the Joker.
Sure.
And then the other character that I created in the first year was Ghostmaker, and that's a character who's been in my head for a long time. I actually tried pitching when DC started like Ink and Zoom, I wanted to do like a Young Adventures of Bruce Wayne type series.
All right.
And like, in that kind of like shonen manga style, and I wanted to create a rival character for Bruce in that era. And then once I realized it's just like, okay, like that's what I want to bring in here, but that's a character who's just like requires a life, like it's an anti-Batman who has been Batman's rival and has known him since he was a teenager. Like, it's a badass design. Like, could I tell a Ghostmaker story in a world without Batman? Like, sure. But it's one of those things where those aren't really the sort of comics. Like, I'm interested in telling the stories of those characters in the like matrix of superhero comics and the existing superhero universes. And so it's, and like when I'm doing creator-owned books, there's a reason I'm not like writing, superhero adjacent type stuff. It's like I'm scratching a different itch. Sure. So it's just like I did want to throw some toys back into the toy box, and sure, 10 years from now, maybe I'll regret it horribly. Right. But it is, I went into it knowing what I was doing and and this is the other thing. It was my Batman run launched about 9 months before my first ever Image book, The Department of Truth. And the thing that was more important to me than anything was to use the 9 months leading up to Department of Truth to tell comic book retailers all over the country that I could sell comic books so that they would invest in that first issue. Because that is where I was going to reap the rewards.
Yep.
So if I tell every comic book shop in the country that it's just like, oh, wait. Like first, we didn't order enough Something Is Killing the Children, and now we got up the orders that month to month. We didn't order enough of his Batman. Holy crap! We got to up the orders on that month to month, and then we got to order his Image book, and that was the thing that was in the back of my head.
Yeah. No, I get every bit of that. I just it doesn't matter.
No. But I mean, here's the other real thing. Like, if superhero universes don't have new characters like introduced into them, they start dying on the vine.
Yeah, but I guess I would argue that you were already a successful writer on Batman, so you could have just phoned it in.
Sure.
And it still would have almost certainly gone up in sales because at least it would have been better than.
I hear you. I hear you. But it's like I wanted to push myself.
Yeah. No. It's great. Yeah. Let's stop talking about Batman. There's enough about Batman in this world. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Actually, where did it come from?
Well, it's funny because I feel like when people pick it up, a lot of people think it's a pandemic book. Like especially when it launched, and it's just the idea of being isolated in a house, right? With it's a pod. It's like a group of friends. But I actually pitched it for the first time in I think it was 2017.
Wow.
And but I mean, at that point, it was always like, I mean, it was in the same, like, I came up with in the same summer, Nice House, Department of Truth, and Something is Killing the Children. Like, they were all kind of cousins to each other in my head. And Nice House, I knew, like, I had, like, and I had been talking about the idea of, like, a friend invites everyone, like his closest friend, his entire friend group, to this beautiful house in the middle of nature, and tells them all that it's the end of the world, and that he's brought them all there to be safe, and that they'll live the rest of their lives out there in peace and harmony, but everyone else is dead, and you're never leaving here again. And the idea of throwing the characters into that kind of pressure cooker and making them grapple with, the two instincts. And it's like, there's the instinct to try to push back against this paradise because you know what that paradise cost. Or it's like, you know what, pushing back against that paradise is like pointless. And even we can push back all we want, we might not be able to save anyone on the outside, so let's just enjoy this. Let's just live in this. And it just felt to me very much about, I mean, honestly, how it feels like living in this modern moment, where it's just like, are you, like, what do you have to grapple with to sort of live in comfort? And, and also the weight of pushing back against that. Yeah. And the original idea was really that raw. It was like, and beyond that, I wanted, like, in my head, I saw it as weirdly a successor comic to what I had done with The Woods. The Woods was a series that was basically me trying to deal with, like, all of my unresolved emotions from high school. And Nice House on the Lake is me dealing with all my unresolved issues from my 20s. And, and just the way that friend groups kind of break apart and change over time, and friendships change over time, and what we demand of each other changes over time. And, and that's why, like, and similarly, I did the same thing that I did in The Woods that I did here, which is I cast myself as the villain of the story. And Walter is, like, entirely based on me. And and honestly, I ended up leaning even further in where, I got permission from like a bunch of my friends to basically, take real moments in our past and kind of fictionalize them here. And it is, I wanted to look at some of the things I like the least about myself, and make a book and do a book that really made me uncomfortable to write.
The structure of the book is what really kind of sticks with me. It feels very clockwork in a way that I haven't felt in a long time about a comic.
I appreciate that.
Like, it feels like it was really well thought out. That's hard to accomplish in comics. At what point did you come to the structure of the 10 protagonists, and each one sort of had an issue thematically about them?
That came, like, one thing, and it's just like, we've got the Damon Lindelof quote on the cover. You can see the the lost in the DNA of this book, and it is I knew I wanted to dig into these characters' pasts. I knew that I wanted to have the chance to show how, with each of their relationships with Walter before the current moment, to give depth to the current moment. And so, like, figuring out, like, and I was terrified when I made the decision, and it, like, less in issue 1, because in issue 1 you could change the structure radically when you go into issue 2. It's like, once I structured issue 2 in the same way I structured issue 1, I knew this was the format of the book.
Right.
And it's intimidating.
Interesting. So that you didn't have that ahead of time?
It was like I knew I wanted each issue to I knew I wanted to be a kind of every issue was a bit standalone.
Mhm.
Like I wanted to deliver, each individual moment in I wanted to accomplish something every single issue. I didn't want there to be middle issues.
Sure.
And I knew that I wanted to have these series of cliffhangers, and most of the ones that from my first outline, I carried forward. But honestly, shortly before I started writing the first issue, I rewatched Cape Fear. And Cape Fear opens with this great, it's only 3 sentences long, but Juliette Lewis just speaks directly to the camera. And it was just and it hit me in a way that, it hadn't hit me in the previous times I had seen it. And I saw the opening sequence of the first issue,
Mhm.
and I saw that it was just okay, I want Ryan to speak directly to the camera. I want to show I wanted the full weight of her relationship with Walter, and the sense of everything is going to go terribly wrong. And I wanted to leave the reader with that before we then pulled back and just introduced everyone and and this the space of the house and all of that stuff. But yeah, no, it wasn't something. I'm someone who I revise my outlines constantly.
Okay.
It's I knew that I wanted there's the ending of the 12th issue is still the ending of the 12th issue that I envisioned before I got started. But there were plenty of twists and turns along the way that I came to along while I was writing it, because I knew that it required a dialing up. Honestly, what is currently issue 6 was going to originally be more of a there was going to be kind of a two, because there was going to be an issue focusing on every single character.
Mhm.
That was 10 characters that we were going to focus on over the course of it, and then right in the middle there were going to be kind of 2 issues that then told the backstory of Nora, Reg, and Walter. And I knew that that was going to be kind of the structure. That's how we got to the 12. It was going to be 5, 5, and then 2. But then I sort of saw it's just okay, we're going I realized how to do that in 1, and then I realized what that would give me in the second half. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This intrigues me because it may be because I've been talking to more cartoonists lately than authors, but I'm talking to so many cartoonists who are no, everything is worked out before I even start actually producing the thing.
Yeah. No, and I mean it is something that I love in serialized comics is that the comics tell you what they are. And I try not, and honestly now I lean into it. For recently I launched Nightmare Country, and I have a super structure of what I'm going to do. I know the big final moments of the series, but it was one of those things where I knew the first most important thing is the first issue, and the next most important thing is the ending,
right?
And then it's the broad strokes of how do you get from A to B. But once you start writing it, you start realizing that characters that seemed more interesting in the outline are less interesting on the page.
Sure.
And you also start seeing, when the pages start coming in, who are the characters that come to life under the pen of your artist, and that changes the whole dynamic of writing the book. And if you are too closed off to be willing to change once you learn those things, then the book won't be what it can be.
Sure.
So literally over the weekend I had a whole brainstorm moment where I realized something that needed to happen in the middle of the first arc of Nightmare Country, and I threw out my outline. And then I rewrote a whole outline like on the plane because it was just like, oh, adding these 2 new elements in is going to like restructure the whole like thing and make it so much better.
Yeah.
And and I don't think I would have been able to do that beforehand without doing the actual like boots on the ground writing.
Yeah. How far ahead of you are your art? How far ahead of your artists are you? Generally,
not as much as I should.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean that's the struggle when you're working, on as many titles as I am. Is like it's a lot of you got to feed the beast.
Yeah. How many ongoing narratives are you writing right now?
Let's count them, shall we?
Yeah.
There's Something's Killing the Children, Nice House on the Lake, Department of Truth, Wind, Nightmare Country, and then I have other, things that I'm working on that aren't ongoing in the same way, and then I have stuff that I'm working on that won't come out for a year or so.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of threads to juggle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I mean, that's how I like to figure things out.
Yeah.
As I'm doing it,
Yeah.
and it is and they're always like at the beginning of a thing. That's when the potential of it. There are so many potentials of what a story can become. And I've told the story a bunch of when I got started on Something's Killing the Children. What I originally pitched was a 5-issue miniseries. Every issue was going to be a standalone issue that was going to be structured kind of like, the middle issues or one-shots in the middle of like a run of Sandman or Hellblazer, where it would focus on an ordinary person living in a small town in America, and then they would brush up against, an Erica Slaughter story where she is encountering, taking down a monster that they will never comprehend or see. And getting, I was writing the first issue, and I realized that wasn't the comic I wanted to write. And then I called my editor and was like, I'm gonna just feel this one out. First 3 issues of Something's Killing the Children, the comic's telling me what to write. I did not have a clear plan. I just knew that eventually Erica Slaughter was going to kill the monster and, move on to the next town. But then once the book was successful and I realized, like, okay, I had the room to tell the story however I wanted to tell it, that's when I sat down and I outlined the entire, 15-issue structure. And then once I had that, then I kept going. And now I have Something's Killing the Children outlined for the next few years, and I bet I don't deviate significantly from that outline, because now I know the book.
Right.
I know the rules of the book, I know the characters and all of that. Like, the idea I have now will still be the right idea in 6 months.
Yeah.
But when you're starting something, the more you know what happens in issue 6, the more that can be a detriment of what happens in issues 1 and 2.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Have you had a situation where you weren't able to get to the place that you thought that you were going to get to? That's not inherently bad.
No, only when I realized that that's the wrong place to go. I've never written myself into a corner. The only times that I feel like I've almost written myself into a corner had less to do with projects that I had creative control over and more because, there were top-down mandates and I was writing on a licensed book that, the road that I was paving to the ending I wanted to get to was ripped up. And then I had to go down a different road that didn't get me exactly where I wanted to go. And I can make the most of that, but my detective run's a great example of that. That did not end how I wanted it to. I'm satisfied with the ending of my Detective Comics run, but that's not what I had planned.
Yeah. Interesting. Where? At what point did Alvaro, if I'm pronouncing that right, come in to the book?
Very early on.
Okay.
We had been working on Justice League Dark, and before that, he was one of the artists on my detective run. And by the time we were together on Justice League Dark, I knew that I wanted to make comics with Alvaro forever. And when we had started working together, he had an art rep that all of our communication ran through. And when we started Justice League Dark, we started communicating directly. And once we started the direct communication, and that's what led to the creation of the Upside Down Man and the Other Kind and all this stuff that we played with in Justice League Dark. We had a lot of fun with the designs of settings and all of this stuff. And so I knew that eventually what I wanted to do was do a creator-owned with him. But at that moment, they had just announced that Vertigo was shuttering, and I had no idea if, DC Black Label had any interest in doing creator-owned and all of this stuff. And, I had the idea for Nice House, but the way that my exclusive contract worked was anything I had a carve out to do a certain number of books outside of my, outside of what I was doing for DC. And I would need to give DC basically had 3 months to say whether or not they wanted to do the book. And so, I pitched, what I want. I pitched them the book. And that's the one that, Chris Conroy, who had been our editor on Detective Comics and had just stepped over to DC Black Label, was just like, yeah, we really like this, and we want to try to figure out a way to how to do it. And then once Something is Killing the Children launched as well as it did, that's when, I had a meeting with Dan DiDio where he pulled me into the office and was like, we want you doing more stuff like Something is Killing the Children at DC. And I was like, well, I have a pitch. It's like if you want to greenlight that pitch, go for it. And and that once it was greenlit, I was able to be the artist I desperately want for this is Alvaro. And the biggest reason I wanted Alvaro is he's the artist who is least afraid of intricate setting work that I've ever worked with. And that was the thrilling thing, was just okay, how do we I need someone who's going to be excited. It's going to be the same setting for 12 issues. There'll be some variations and twists on it, but it's just we need to build a house that you are going to enjoy drawing for this whole time. And once he freed up, we spent 2 months designing the house. Before he started on the first issue. It was designing the house and each of the characters, both of their adults and as teenagers or college kids. And it was doing all of that groundwork that really kind of it really centered the series, because once we got up and running, the core of my scripts was very much talking about the acting. The setting, I don't have to describe, I can just say what room it's taking place in. I know what's on the shelves in the book, in the library and all this stuff. It's the, Alvaro draws the closest to how I see things in my head when I write, and that's why I latched on to him. And in Justice League Dark, they very deliberately tried to force us to stop doing the double page spread layouts that we really enjoy doing. And going into this, it was just oh yeah, we're going back to that, in a big way. And and then the rest is history.
Yeah. So he wasn't attached as an artist when you pitched it originally.
No.
Yeah. Is that typical for your books to not have the artist?
At that point, yes.
Yeah.
Now I publishers don't find out about my books until
you have a creative team assembled. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like, but at that moment, you know, I like, especially before I've had the last few years of sales that I had, it's just like, you know, signing up to do a book with me was not a, you know, it was a gamble. So it was just the, you know, a lot of time it was like, how do we find, you know, the right person that we can get for something like this? And, you know, like, and the biggest bit of, like, with Alvaro I wanted. Like, once I knew I was doing this at DC, like, DC wanted it, and I knew that, you know, I was going to have to leave Justice League Dark because I was taking on Batman, but I didn't want to stop working with Alvaro. I was just like, this is what I want. And it's just like, if we don't do it this way, then I'm going to wait until our contracts are up, and then we are going to go do it at Image.
Right.
Like, you know, once Alvaro read the pitch and liked the pitch, I wanted to do it with Alvaro. You know, but something like Something Is Killing the Children, you know, that was a rough idea that, you know, I just pitched to Boom, and you know, Boom is the one who showed me Werther's art, and I was just like, the thing that I loved about Werther's art was that he drew a really good gas station, and at the time I was doing all this, like, you know, cosmic DC shit, and it was just like, the idea, like, the thing that I was most excited about in Something Is Killing Children was just like, if I do a scene in the Applebee's, I don't have to, in the context of this scene, describe what an Applebee's is and how it works. Like, I can just put a scene in an Applebee's, and it was the most thrilling concept to me, because it's like, I don't have to explain the, like, how a multiverse works, like, in 3 balloons, like, stuck in a corner. Yeah, so it's just that. He drew a great gas station, and I was like, this is the guy. And then he turned in the first drawing of Erica, and he's the one who came up with the mask. That wasn't in my original ideas was, like, she had the tattoo on her arm, she had the trepanation scar on her head, like, and the scar was kind of, like, blocked off by her hair. Like, you know, the rest of her design was kind of, like, clear in my head, but he came up with the idea that when she hunts the monsters, she becomes a monster herself. And he was just like, you know, like, he just like, oh, what do you think of this? And then it's just that changed the entire trajectory of the book. Like, and, like, what the book was. And, you know, that, like, being open to that was, like, the right call.
And how about with Truth?
With Department of Truth, I found Mark.
Okay. That was, because it was an Image book, so you had to walk in there with a completed truth.
So, like, with that, it was, you know, but that was one that I knew the feel of the book I wanted. But it's like, you know, I wasn't anybody. I wasn't going to get Bill Sienkiewicz to, like, you know, do a monthly Image comic with me. And it was just like, but I knew I wanted it to have that kind of scritchy, like, you know, in the language of, like, you know, late 80s, early 90s Sienkiewicz, like, and Dave McKean of the same era. I wanted that feel. And I also wanted, like, that sense of, like, you know, a scritchy photocopy of a photocopy, but I couldn't find the right guy for the longest time. And it was actually, and I'd been aware of Martin's work, but Martin had been working in a digital style for a while. And, you know, and his digital work, it feels a little more Phil Noto than anything. And it's still very good, but it's like, I had seen that, but it never occurred to me. And it was actually my friend Matt Rosenberg who pointed me in the direction of his Instagram, because for Inktober he had done these great, you know, series of sketches of, you know, different musicians, and they were all, like, scritchy and weird. And it was just like, and I reached out to him and I was like, Martin, like, I love your work. Like, I know the feel of this book. I have this pitch for this book. And, like, you know, and Department of Truth is, like, the opposite of me, like, following the outline of Department of Truth that I came up with when I first pitched it, like, 2 years before I started writing the first issue, is still roughly the outline I'm following right now. So it's like different books feel, like, operate in different ways. I've extended it. It's accordioned out, but the, like, core pieces are all there. But you know, I reached out to Martin. I was just like, okay, like, you know, is this a direction you want to move your art in? Because if I ask you to do this, this is how you're going to be working for the next few years. Right. Like, and if that's not something you're interested in, like, you know, then this isn't going to work. And thankfully, he was just like, that's all he had wanted to switch back to analog. He had wanted to, play with collage and all of this stuff, but like honestly, he wasn't for a lot of his smaller creator-owned books, he was not getting a page rate that would really allow him to put that much time and work into to it all. And so it was just like, okay, what would you need to make this happen? And that's what we pulled together to get the first arc off the ground. And then thankfully it launched really well.
Yeah.
Otherwise I would still be paying off those credit card bills.
Well, you had a bunch of launches in a row that all did over 6 figures, and that's pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, no, it feels like I'm happy about it.
Yeah. It's surprising because it's not as though when someone writes Batman that automatically the next thing sells.
Yeah.
No. So what would you ascribe it to?
I mean, I do think that for a while there were a few things.
Great writing.
I appreciate that.
I thought that was stipulated, frankly,
but there were a few things that happened that that helped me out, I think, significantly. The first thing, and there's no way to ever prove this, but this is what is true in the back of my mind, is The Walking Dead ended unexpectedly. The Walking Dead ended unexpectedly, and the only horror #1 that was available to order at the next FOC was Something is Killing the Children #1. And at that point, retailers have been sent out a review copy and all that, and enough people were like, you know what? We want to keep this, the audience that's been picking this up, maybe we can get some of them to jump over this. And
it was returnable as well, right?
It was a
boom, returnable book, yeah.
And we sold about 30K of that, which was very good at that moment with Boom. It was one of their highest launches. And so that was the first step. It was just okay, there was that bit of serendipity, and that helped funnel into the launch of Something's Killing the Children. That also, and then the reviews were very good and all that stuff, and the arts was absolutely incredible. Both Werther and the colorist on the book is incredible, Mikel Muerto. And it was just okay, felt like a cool comic, all this stuff. And then right after that comes out, I'm announced as the new writer on Batman coming up. And, it was an interesting stretch that fall, because I was starting work at that point on Department of Truth, which I knew was going to come out in, the following fall. If, everything worked out, I was going to be able to launch, what I wanted to hit was roughly when Something is Killing the Children had launched 1 year later. So that was the idea in my head. And I was going to, but the thing that I realized is just I need, there is a story I can tell, which is, here's a book that is overperforming for you. Here's a Batman book, and then I'm going to overperform on your expectations of that. And then I want to carry all of that in to Department of Truth.
Yeah.
And I knew that because that's at 3 different publishers, no one else was going to tell that story. And at that point, there was always issues dealing with the marketing side of the companies and all this stuff, but it's just because they always have so many books that they're trying to sell, and it's not something that I even put against them, but it's just they have to take bets. They have to basically bet on the surest thing in any given moment. And I forget what was even launching that January, off of my Batman run. But I realized pretty quickly that they weren't going to be pushing my Batman run as the big thing that was coming out that month.
Sure.
So I was going to have to do it, and that's why around Thanksgiving of 2019, I started my newsletter for the first time. And I started banging the drum where it was just like, okay, you want to pick up this Batman run. This is how I'm going to sell the Batman run. And, this is how I'm going to, tell you what's coming up and Something's Killing the Children. I'm going to sell you my Batman run. And it was all designed to like, okay, if I can like run this for a year and then funnel everything into Department of Truth, like that's what it's going to be. But then drop right into the middle of that pandemic.
Yeah.
And especially like right before the pandemic, like in the shutdown of printing and all of that stuff, that's like right when I got the news that, the next issue of Batman that was going to come out was going to be like have numbers close to the like Batman wedding, like because of the like Punchline debut. And it was just like, and then the moment that like DC released those orders, I thought it was dumb. I thought the whole system I had built had like completely collapsed. And I had no idea. I didn't know I was going to pay for Department of Truth. I didn't know how, what was going to happen in Batman. Like, if I was going to be able to stay on the book. And I only had a few more issues to write at that point. Like, so it's just like I needed to know, what was going to come next. So it was just this really bizarre moment. And like, thankfully, like, it worked out for me. But it was just like, it was like a shock to the system in a way where, I didn't like it. That made me push harder.
Yeah.
And it was just like, okay, how do I plan for everything going wrong from here? And how do I build like contingency plans for myself and all this stuff? And, one of the things that I like, I wanted to, like, and that's around the time I created the Razor Blades horror anthology and all this stuff. I wanted to like create, I just wanted to make stuff. Like I wanted to, everything had stopped and I wanted to like, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to like, keep the momentum going. And also I wanted something that I was just like, because that's whenever you're doing something like a newsletter, like, the audience needs to feel your excitement for what's coming next. So like Razor Blades more than anything was like, how do I create something that can fully embody my excitement without like, like showing anyone how terrified I am that the whole system's about to collapse. And and then there was another like very like, there's the more mercenary side of like what Razor Blades did, which is the fact that I was direct selling a like small press comic to retailers. And it all of a sudden made like, I was in direct communication with dozens of retailers all over the country. Even if they were only buying like, 2 to 5 copies of this thing, I was shipping them out of my like living room. But it was just like I was having that kind of direct communication. And then when, Department of Truth came around, it was just like I had that relationship with them. And that was something that I could sort of build off of. And I had already started building some of those relationships with Something Is Killing the Children, because some stores like really bought into that early on. And it was just like, and I was able to give those stores who I had started that communication with a bit of like, it's like, hey, I'm doing this like anthology thing, and like, do you want a copy and all this stuff? And it was a really good learning experience of how to, continue, like, in a moment where of uncertainty, figuring out how to capture my own enthusiasm and how to keep that system moving and alive. I'm not sure I'm expressing that well.
No, that makes plenty of sense.
Yeah.
What did Department of Truth launch at?
100.
That's a serious hit. That's not even fooling. That's you're making more money doing that than you made writing Batman.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so that felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, everything that I put on the credit cards was paid off by the first issue.
Yeah.
Which I was very relieved by. But I mean, like that, you know, like, but the weird way that that works, by the way, is that you actually don't get the first check from Image until 3 months after the first issue comes out. So basically, and you also need to have 3 issues in the can before they'll solicit it, which comes out 3 issues. So basically, you need to have the whole first arc, more or less. And it's just like we were able to fudge it just a little bit, you know, because it's like the pandemic, they wanted books to come out, you know, but it was we had to have everything out at a steady pace, and you know, keep everyone paid, keep everyone moving. And then on top of that, like one of the things that I wanted to promise retailers was that there would be an issue of Department of Truth every single month for the first 12 months. Because that was something that I had noticed, and a lot of creator runs weren't doing that. It was just like it was taking the breaks in between and all of that. And I wanted to tell people that it's just like, especially at a moment of uncertainty for the industry, it's just like if you invest in this book, it's going to show up in your store every single month for the next 12 months. And we successfully did that through issue 13. And now we're going to take up breaks between arcs. I'm sorry.
Why you?
But it's like, you know, I think promises that you make retailers are really important.
Yeah. Was that first issue returnable as well?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that helps.
So it helps, right? Like it's fundamentally helps, I think,
Yeah.
to get the retailers over that line.
Yes.
Though it radically increases your risk.
Yes.
No?
Yeah. I mean, it ended up, the nice thing is that we didn't have, like, you know, like when a book is returnable, you know, basically a pool of money is like held by Image in case those returns end up happening. But thankfully, you know, the fact that we did a, you know, 100 run, and then that first issue ended up going into 8 printings. So it's just like we did not have any returns in any significant numbers.
Yeah.
So it's like, even though they held off that money, we did fine.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's true for most returnable books, though. That retailers aren't returning them most of the time.
Yeah.
They do sometimes because you get misses, but
Yes.
you know, for the most part, we're not buying stuff that we don't think we can sell.
Yeah.
You know, we just like having the bet covered because Marvel and DC certainly won't do that for us anymore.
No, and I think that makes things really so much easier, and it makes it, you know, like it should, like anything that can be done to make it easier for a shop to invest in a number one is worth doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree as well. Then this also launched at over 100?
123. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the one I wasn't expecting, because at least, like, you know, I understand the sales pitch of like something is killing children. It's like you got this cool looking person who's hunting monsters. Mm-hmm. It's just like, and it's got like a catchy title. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh yeah, if you're not squeamish, you don't want to read this book. Like that's a sales point in and of itself. Department of Truth is like, here's X-Files with conspiracy theories, and you know, it's like, you know, it's dealing with some edgy stuff, like you know, and that, like, you know, so I understand the sales point. This is a book that's a bunch of people like talking in rooms. Mm-hmm. So I was not convinced that, like, you know, and then on top of it, I had no idea, like, you know, I don't know the exact numbers, but, you know, of previous creator-owned launches in the year or two prior to this at DC. But I know that because of those, that the internal estimates of what that was going to sell were $25K.
Right.
And that's how they dictate how they're going to promote the book and all of that, because they want to hit that number. That's the important number for them to hit. but that was like lower than I launched Something Is Killing the Children at, and I was the writer of Batman, and it's just like, if DC can't sell the writer of Batman is on a creator-owned book when he's just had two like hit titles, and especially at that moment, like Something Is Killing the Children had just blown up in a big way, because it was our third arc of that where we saw standard attrition for the first two arcs, but with issue 11, every arc has started with higher and higher numbers. Issue 11 sold 3 times as much as, issue 11 sold, over twice as much. Like, I think it was about 75, up from 30, and then issue 16 sold about 115.
Wow.
And then we've continued that rise arc to arc. But like, so I knew that it's just like, okay, this is a new number one, and I felt it. It's like, I knew it was good. I was really, really proud of it, but it's just like, it's also one of those things where the most sellable element of it is the thing I want nobody to know before they pick up the first issue. Like, I want that to hit people. So it's just like, I was panicked that DC wasn't going to sell it, and that they didn't know how to sell it. And, how, and I also knew that it, and I just didn't know that the audience would jump at it in the way that they had jumped at the last two. And thankfully, and I had a lot of long conversations where it's just like, there was some push and pull of like, okay, we need to get this in, people need to read the book so they can order this.
Yeah.
And we need to, we need to use the mechanisms that we have as DC Comics to actually push and promote it. And
they made it returnable, as I recall.
Yeah.
It was one of the first books in a while that had been made returnable.
Yeah. No, and I think that really, really helped.
Really helped, yeah.
And that allowed it to, find this audience. And then it, it also just, the nice thing is that there was great word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because, once people started reading the first issue, they told their friends to read the first issue. And one of the best, selling point is, don't read what happens in the first issue. You just have to read it. That, creates an urgency to have to read it. So I was extremely, extremely grateful that worked.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because DC certainly, I don't think at least, has done another creator-owned book in the Black Label line.
No, I
right?
think there was another Hill House book, the Refrigerator.
Yeah, but that was Hill House. That was a different deal than Black Label.
Yeah. No, I think the Philip Kennedy Johnson fantasy book.
Oh,
was
yeah.
Also just pure Blacklist.
Yeah. Okay.
But
okay.
I think I think we've been the only two.
Yeah, and so, because since then it's all been the slightly more edgy superhero things.
Yeah.
Which is, good Lord, DC, can you not? I mean, just because this sells 126,000 copies, and most of the edgy, big, oversized superhero comics don't sell very well at all.
Well, no comment. I mean, I think that there's I do wish that there was a deeper investment into books like this, because I think we can, there is, because I mean, when I got into comics, it was Vertigo. That was the thing. And beyond that, it was just that backlist was the biggest tool in DC's arsenal for years and years and years, where it was just they kept in print the best comics that were made in the 90s and 2000s. And you could just order all 10 volumes, and it was just that is so incredibly powerful and so incredibly important. And the importance of new books that fill that thing is that it sells that backlist.
Sure.
Legitimately, what I'm excited that with me doing all these other things, I want some of the readers who have only read you know, my like something is killing children to like me doing Nightmare Country. I want them to go read Sandman. I want them to read the thing that made me want to read, and beyond read Sandman. I want them to read Mike Carey's Lucifer, like which is like one of my favorite comics of all time. Like there are so many great comics out there that, you know, I don't know. I do feel like using the, you know, and this is sort of a tangent, but I think using current books to help sell the backlist is something that it's like a lost art form.
Sure.
Not even like directly, but it's just like it's how you group them. It's how you, I don't know.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly you look around the store, you can see we have author shelves, and you know, it's we're trying to build that because that's how it works. That's you know, I my favorite thing in the world is people who are still making money off of things they wrote 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, that's literally my favorite thing in comics.
Yeah. No,
is, you know, wow, you drew this then and you were really great and you're still producing great work now, but look, you're still making money off of this thing.
Yeah.
You know? And,
no, I mean that's like, and that's also what, you know, a lot of the decisions I make are about how do I create that shelf for myself. Yeah. And what is going to be, what is the work that will, you know, help bolster my, like, allow me to keep doing the sort of stuff that I want to do 5-10 years from now. Like, you know, because I think that, you know, I have the, you know, I've sold enough comics that it's just like I wouldn't be too worried about getting license gigs. Like I'm sure I could get a license gig, you know, 10 years from now. You know, like, but it is the, like, but what I want to be doing is like, you know, at some point maybe I'm just like doing you know, like the equivalent of like Stephen King doing a horror novel a year. Like, you know, maybe I'm doing that, or maybe I just like, you know, want to sit back for 3 years and like do something that I get to write every bit of before it comes out in stores and all of that. Like, I don't know. The creative autonomy is, as a North Star, is like really, really important to me, and it's so rare in comics. Yeah. Yeah. So that's
it's so rare to be able to be successful.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of people try.
Yes. No, 100%.
Yeah. And you've had a remarkable string of books in a row. I kind of love it. I kind of love it. Is that a question from Kat Kelly?
Hello.
Oh, hello, Kat Kelly. Would you ask your question?
Yes, we've been talking a lot about numbers, and I don't do math. So I would like to ask you a process question.
Yes, please.
I'd like to know more about you. What is your process? Do you need gummy bears? Do you listen to records? How does that evolve over time? When you feel uninspired, what do you do?
That is a really, really good question, and I wish I had figured. I wish I could say I had figured out the exact formula to be productive, like when I want to be productive. But it seems like the most crucial element of me being very productive is a looming deadline, and I wish that was the case. Like the guilt of knowing an artist needs pages that is just like sitting on their hands waiting is like the best way to get me moving. But you know, some things flow easier than others. And I think a lot of my writing is finding the flow. Because, you know, starting an issue is the hardest part. Once I am in the flow of an issue, I like, you know, I've always thought of myself as a sprinter as a writer. It is something where I will think about a thing for a very, very long time, but when my fingers hit the keyboard, I, you know, will write it in maybe not one session, but it's like 2 sessions. Mark Wade gave me a piece of advice that I try to keep with, you know, like at the start of my career. Like he told me that it's like, you never want to write an entire issue in one day. So it's like, even if it's just like you leave one sentence unfinished, like just leave it unfinished and come back to it the next day and then go finish it then, because you'll feel better about it. And then anything that you've like second guessed to all of that, you can just like, you know, there's always one thing you can tweak and make a bit better. But you know, like it is. I have an office space in Brooklyn that you know I like having control over the space I'm in. I don't work great, honestly, and like going out into the world. I can do it like while I'm traveling, and I can like put enough music in my ears to kind of drown the world out. But I honestly like writing in silence, and I need to just sort of and the thing I'm always chasing is just when I zero in on the script and it's just flowing out. And it is to get to that, like there are little tricks that sometimes I'll do. One thing that I'm pretty sure is just like a pure placebo effect, but it's just like I'm not gonna like knock it. It's like once a week I will take a ginseng supplement, and it's just like, okay, now I can have super brain powers for like 3 hours. And if I'm hitting the wall, I will like let myself believe in that placebo effect and let it take hold. But it is, every project's a little different. Something is Killing the Children is the easiest book for me to write. It's a decompressed book. It's something that I've outlined, so it's just like I know what happens in pretty much every scene, and I know the characters well enough that it's just like it's like put the script in front of me and I can knock out like pages very, very quickly. Nice House is one of the more difficult things to start. Starting those issues is really, really tough because the first 4 pages always has an incredible. There's a dense amount of information in those first 4 pages, and that's a format that I've only broken a couple of times in the run so far. In the first start, rather than getting a 2-page flashback scene in the Ronnie issue, we get a 4-page flashback scene because it's the first time that you see Walter in his like flesh tornado state in a bit of memory, and it's also happening at the moment where you really get the sense that Walter's control of the scenario is breaking, so the format shifts. And then the next issue, the format shifts even further, and the whole issue is pretty much in flashback. And then he reasserts control, and then we go back to the 4 pages. And that's something that it's just like, and I think that that's one of those things, going back to one of the earlier questions, it's once you set rules for yourself, you kind of have to stick with them. Mm-hmm. And then when you break them, there needs to be a reason for breaking them. And it's fun to come up with reasons to break the rules. But it's, once something is done in a certain way, you kind of have to you keep going with it, and I lost that train of thought. Went away from me, but it is just like I love those first 4. I love living in those first 4 pages, and I know what the next. I know what I'm going to do with those through the end, and there's a few brutal ones that I am waiting for that are going to kind of break the format as we get towards the end of this first 12 issues. So but that makes it more difficult because something is Killing Children. First scene can be whatever I want. It's what is the most exciting way. I know the 4 things that need to happen this issue. What's going to be the most compelling page one? And leaning into that is incredibly fun. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kat, did that answer you sufficiently, or do you have a follow-up to that? Very good. Follow-up question: do you want another beer?
That is a great follow-up.
I like that.
I very much appreciate that follow-up.
Would you get me some more water? Thank you. Since we've opened it up for questions, would one of you like to ask a question, please?
If you were going to do a Barbara Gordon run, what would you like to see happen?
Oh boy. Honestly, it's funny that you say that because Barbara is the character who I was able to use her a bit in my Joker run and bring her into my Batman run, but she's definitely like the member of the Bat family that I have the most feelings about, that I was able to write the least in all of my time in Gotham. Yeah. I do have specific answers to that question, which is why I'm not going to answer them.
I understand, that's over.
Yeah, no. It's the, like, at this point, because that's the thing. It's just like, yes, I have about, like, there are about 5 Batman stories and, like, 5 Bat family stories that still live in the back of my head. And if all of a sudden everyone stops buying my creator-owned titles, that's what I'm going to go and try to bug DC about. But it is the, like, right now, but yeah, I love the character. I love Marvel. Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite runs is Gail Simone's run
Oh yeah.
on Batgirl. So I was just curious if you ever got to take the helm. Right?
Oh yeah, no. And honestly, for me, it was the honestly Gale's Birds of Prey was probably my that era of Gale is like one of my favorite. Like from her work on honestly, like as I started following her work while she was on Deadpool, and then followed her into like Birds of Prey, and then Secret Six, and all of that. Like she writes those likable, very dangerous people very, very well. But yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to do a follow-up
Yeah.
to your question.
Yeah.
With your Detective Comics run, you said you didn't get to do everything.
Yeah.
If you were going to kind of be able to like, polish out the run, would you have done something different with Tim Drake's story?
I would have it would have had more steps to it. Emotionally, like I closed the arc that I wanted to close, and I got where I wanted to get with it. But we would have gone through honestly, originally I was hoping I was going to be able to do the team book concept through Detective 1000. But they wanted Detective to become another Batman book, and I didn't want to either I was going to keep doing the book I was doing or I wasn't. But yeah, so I hit the emotional ending I wanted to, but there would have been many more plot steps in between. All right, thank you.
Did anybody have any questions about Nice House?
Yeah.
Please.
So for the Walter Flesh Tornado and the flaming meat globs.
Yeah.
What did the script look like? Did it just say Walter turns into a weird thing and then Alvaro's on his own? Or...
So Alvaro's the one who came up with the term Flesh Tornado. So initially what the script called for was Walter to glitch out. And the note that my very smart editor, Chris Conroy, because that was one of the key images that, I knew, I wanted Alvaro to do the anime thing where we never see Walter's eyes. That is, glasses are always whited out. That was something that was always in my head. But, originally it was just, you would see, it was more of a technical glitching out. And it was, and Alvaro did a few passes at that. And, the very smart note that we got back is that this is going to make, everyone's going to think he's a hologram or something like that. There wasn't, he didn't have the presence on the page. And it was is there a way that we can kind of capture this element with, while he still feels like a very physical being? And Alvaro turned in these horrifying images of the first Flesh Tornado. It was Alvaro was wait, I think I have an idea. And then a few days later, he turned in the first designs of Walter as a Flesh Tornado. And ever since then, my script now says Walter goes Flesh Tornado. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Did you have?
Yeah, I actually had a question about House of Slaughter.
Yeah.
That sold 1 million copies or something ridiculous.
versus Something's Killing the Children, and what can we expect from the next arc of that?
Oh yeah, so the way I've always seen House of Slaughter is the BPRD to Something's Killing the Children's Helpline. The core Erica Slaughter story is always going to be told by Werther and me in Something's Killing the Children. But there's this whole big world that we built outside of it that, we wanted to show different aspects of. And so the first arc we picked up on threads of Aaron Slaughter, and we introduced, I wanted every arc to introduce bits of mythology that we might not get to in the main book. So, I wanted to, that's why the first arc of House of Slaughter introduces the idea of one of the other houses, the House of Boucher or the Butcher Shop. The other American house in the Order of St. George in New Orleans. And then we meet Jace Boucher, who is, who was raised in that house and then transfers in, and he has his, he has an agenda there. And Jace's story is something that will continue down the line in that title, but we're sort of going to alternate arcs where it's just the first arc was a Jace story, and the second arc is going to focus on we're going to meet Scarlet Mask, which is the Scarlet Masks are the librarians and the kind of servants in the House of Slaughter, and we're going to meet this very strange man named Edwin Slaughter, who doesn't have much of an imagination, but is a record keeper for the House of Slaughter, and we are going to see him have to go get some information and then end up getting in over his head, as he goes out into the world. And it has incredible art by Letizia Cadenici, and Sam Johns, who worked on the Punchline stories with me at DC, is joining us as the writer. And Sam's also my partner, so we've talked about this world for a really long time. So it is I'm very excited for people to see this next arc, and then the arc after that will bring us back to Jace and continue to peel back layers of the story of the House of Boucher, but also still have ties to the titular House of Slaughter. Especially because the whole first story takes place before Aaron died, and what's the next step of that story is what happens when Jace finds out. So we're having weird to go from that to we're having fun with that. It's playing. It's playing with the full range of the mythology, and seeing what cool stories we can tell there. Yeah.
Do you have an endpoint in mind for that at all?
Yeah, I mean, for House of Slaughter, yes. I think there's a sort of I don't know. I don't want to put a number out for that, but it's Something is Killing the Children. It's I have a long road. Mm-hmm. We are, my current breakdown of Something is Killing the Children takes me through issue 75, and 22 is the one that came out today.
Nice.
So, that one is I was talking about I want my shelf of the 10 volume,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's going to be 10 volumes, but, that's what I want out of Something is Killing the Children. And it's I think House of Slaughter will the Jace story has multiple parts, and then I want to do there's the arc about the Scarlet Masks. I want to get to the Silver Masks, and I want to deal more with the Azure Masks as well, because those characters aren't really going to get the center play in the main book. So it's we see 3 arcs of both that take us roughly to an issue 30, and then if we get there and it's everyone's having a good time, I could see doing a different sort of spin-off title in the same vein. But I don't know if we would continue the same book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just kind of want to bring back to House on the Lake.
Yeah.
it's kind of like a question, but also just like an appreciation. I know that you have a lot of queer characters in a lot of your books, and having one of the main characters be a trans person, I was curious, like, what was the thought process to put them in, like, essentially, like, the main, like, three that we continue to go back to, and also, like, the first time that I saw them, and I was like, oh shit, that's cool. Like, I get to see like somebody like myself, and I also stare at it for like 10, 15 minutes. I was like, oh shit, there's just like long dark hair and glasses. Tired all the time. Like, this is just me.
No, then
just want to share appreciation.
I really appreciate that, and honestly, you know, each of the, you know, and I think I've said you know, Walter is based on me. Each of the supporting cast members is based on mostly they're based on like 2 or 3 of my friends that have kind of merged into one friend. And you know, like that trio of Walter, Reg, and Nora is very much based on like a real trio of us from high school that, you know, like I am, you know, and like I am a queer person. All of my books are always going to be like queer books and like center queer characters, and I knew that I didn't want to shy. Like, if anything, I ended up leaning in even more than I thought I was, like, up front, but I knew that was always going to be a part of it. Like, you know, down to the fact that, like, you know, Walter being, you know, Walter's, like, journey with sexuality very much mirrors my own, where it is the fact that it's like I went to an all-boys Catholic high school at, you know, I came out as bi when I was, like, a freshman. But then when I was a junior, I came out as gay because I was at an all-boys school. That was like the only people I was socializing with. And then I went to predominantly female college at Sarah Lawrence, and it was just like, oh, right, this is more complicated. And it's like, so I took Walter on that same journey. And it is, you know, but like I have had trans friends going all the way back to when, you know, like the first trans person in my immediate group of friends was when I was in 8th grade, and that is like, to accurately represent what I wanted to represent, it required lots of different types of queer people, and enough that it's like everyone can be as much of a hot mess as like everyone is in real life. I didn't want any character to like bear the weight of like, you know, like yeah, you know what I mean. Like, it is, yeah. So Nora is a character who's incredibly important to me, and her role is going to continue to be absolutely central in this story, because she's based on one of my best friends in the world. Like, yeah.
I'm curious if your use of representation has gotten you any blowback from your audience at all.
I feel like I think I exist in a strange space. Like, I don't know. It's like one of those things where, like, you know, like, and it's like I got a little salty maybe last year when, you know, when Nice House launched. It's like, you know, DC's most prominent like queer creator launches a book centering queer creators in Pride Month, and I'm not like was not a part of any like that wasn't mentioned by anyone. And it's like I don't need like, and it's one of those things where all of my characters, every one of my creator-owned books, going back to the absolute beginning, have centered queer characters. The main character of Department of Truth is a gay man. Like, the central characters in Nice House of Light is like, you know, half the cast is queer. The central villain is queer, and yeah, like, and is me. Like, you know, and then you know, also my mirror character in, you know, Something's Killing Children, who I disguise myself very well by naming that character James. Also like a young queer person. And it is just, I don't know. It's a complicated question, and I have a lot of complicated feelings about, I don't know. There are things I don't want to say that I feel about how the conversation around representation gets weaponized.
Sure.
In this, when it's just like, it's like, but I do have I have a very basic agenda that's been my agenda since I was 15, which is like, okay, I want to do every type of story I loved when I was a teenager, but I want to see myself in it. And that is what I've been doing step by step. And have never and it is something where I do like that my books, because I don't know, I've always tried to find the sales point of the book, and I think part of this is I grew up in Wisconsin in the Bush era, and it was so it is one of those things where I am always going to try to sell it's I like the fact that I can sell a book that stars queer characters in a red state. And that has always been, and I can do that without compromising what I want the story to be.
Right.
But it does, it does mean that it's I don't necessarily talk about my, my queer agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have one, and you get a couple beers in me.
I was almost asking it the other way around. I mean, and the reason this was in my head was because on Sunday for the kids club, we talked to Sarah Afagi and Nadia Shamas.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the way that people were treating them as Arabic creators, and it really shocked me that, that people were saying things to them. And I maybe I'm just lucky to live in San Francisco, so I don't see this kind of thing. And I was just wondering if you had gotten any blowback from people, particularly in red states.
I haven't gotten that much, and I think part of it is I am I'm a white guy.
Yeah.
And I write in a style that I think is still in more of the classic Vertigo mold, rather than what they perceive as what's ruining comics,
Right.
which I think is I find infuriating. It's one of those things where it's I am writing the sort of stories that I most want to write, and I do want but it is one of those things where there are a bunch of people who have identified that it's just that there are they just zero in and attack these books. And on top of that, I think that there are a lot of times that there are a bunch of creators who are put in a position by companies where they end up bearing the brunt of a lot of ill will because the company, while not having been given the tools to actually succeed in the space. And I don't know, I'm dancing around more indelicate feelings on this subject because I have a lot of strong feelings, and one of my, I don't know, personal goals has always been especially in the modern in the last few years, is when I bring on creators, it's just I want, especially queer creators that I work with, it's I do not want them to feel boxed in into only being able to tell certain types of stories. I don't know. It's like, you know, you want to tell the most like, you know, like the goriest like horror comic, but you're not given the opportunities because like, you know, the companies are only trying to let you do queer books.
Right.
That happens all the time. And it drives me crazy, and I do what I can to push back against it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that, man. I have to say, as a straight white guy, not that anyone cares what a straight white guy says, but as a straight white guy, I actually have to say that I think the kind of the best thing about comics right this second is that everyone can be represented.
Yeah.
And it's and doesn't and not in a performative way, but in a natural, active way, that the audience is actually out there for voices for whatever it is you want to say.
Yeah.
And however you want to say it. And I think that's just fucking fantastic.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Especially in the kids space. That's
Yes.
the thing that I love. That just kids are exposed to ideas, and it's going to make them better citizens at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know. So that's my queer agenda. I gotta say. So yeah. Is there another question? Because Diego, please. I've been waiting all night, Diego, for you.
Yeah, you said that you seldomly wrote the formula for the first 12 issues of Nice House on the Lake.
I did hear those words as well. The first 12 issues.
Does that mean that you have more plans beyond this? Or
Yes. Yeah.
Really nice.
No, the first 12 issues will tell a complete story. And that's the initial story that I set out to tell. But, and, you know, it ends with, like, a fairly dramatic thing, you know, that you'll find out soon. But it's the world around, like, part of the initial pitch, you know, and it's like, maybe this is, like, you know, like, too much to say, but it's, like, part of the initial pitch was it's just, like, you know, what happens a few years trapped in a place like this? What does your life become when you're so used to this, like, a setting like this? And then on top of it, there's, you know, larger mysteries around Walter's people and all this stuff. So the way I see it in my head, and I think I've said this, like, in an interview before, so it's like the, you know, I don't mind repeating it. It is I see it as 3 seasons. And, you know, each season will be 12 issues, you know, and we'll probably continue in the format of, like, you know, between season 1 and season 2, there will be a significant break, even though, like, we'll probably get Aldro working on season 2 pretty quickly, but it's just, like, I think we want to build up a bit more time. Just because, you know, you see the intricacies of the art there. Mm-hmm. Like, this is you know, it's a book that takes some time to make. And then I made the stupid decision to add design pages, so every issue is 26 pages worth of, technically 28, but 2 of those include the title design page. So it's just like, you know, it's 28 pages. It's a lot of pages, and then when you know, those design pages, like, you know, you got to write a lot of text to keep those nice and dense.
Yeah.
So no, that's the trap that I set for myself. That I fall into, like, before every single one of these issues comes out.
And again, this surprises me that DC went along with that, considering that their regular comics are now 20 or 22.
They're back up to 22.
Back up to
for a
22.
while.
Yeah, they were 20. Yeah.
So yeah,
man. Oh.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes. Go, please.
Hi. I had a DC versus Vampire question.
Please.
First of all, it's such a, like, every month. It's so fun. You know, I feel like it's just, I have been really loving it. Curious to hear your inspiration for the story, and specifically about the identity of Vampire King. Did you know that going in?
Oh yeah, that was
like-
central to the original
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Like,
it
the,
really
the
gives
big, this is
part.
the big twist at the end of issue 6, but so I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't. But that was part of the original idea. I wanted to focus on, I don't know, like the brutal answer to like where did this story come from was the fact that I was getting very frustrated not being able to tell the stories that I wanted to tell in DC continuity, and I was still under contract for another year and a half. And I wanted to build a book that I could write alongside Nice House on the Lake in the world that I didn't get, Batman, so I could ride out the rest of my contract and fulfill the terms of it. So I pitched a DC horror apocalypse I pitched it before I got approved on Batman, or after I got on Batman, but the first few months of me being on Batman were difficult because DC didn't know what they wanted from me. That was my escape raft, but I liked the idea enough that when I was working, I came up with the main editor on Batman was also the main editor on Deceased, and it was just like, so it was just like, okay, how can we do something in the vein of Deceased that can create its own little pocket DC universe where we can just like have some fun, do some mayhem, do something that feels different than Deceased because, Deceased, like page 1, you're already in apocalypse mode, and then everything's falling apart, and we wanted something that we could see a conspiracy growing, so we wanted like 12 issues, and then I didn't have the bandwidth to write it solo, so I wrote like a comprehensive outline and brought in my friend Matt Rosenberg, who's like one of my closest friends, and he was able to take the reins and do a lot more of the boots on the ground writing. He is also the reason that Green Arrow is as big of a character in it. All of the Bat family stuff is very much like that was my agenda, heading into it, and all the Green Arrow stuff is very much Matt's agenda coming into it, and it is it all blended together really nicely.
Yeah, it really does.
Cool.
Yeah. Please do.
Hi, James.
Hey.
I am very drawn to strong women in your comics. So we've got Erica Slaughter, we've got Jessica and Cecilia, we even have Adelaide, right?
Yeah.
And my very favorite is the Lady in Red.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, how do you base these characters on? Is there somebody in your life that you write about, or is it just kind of concepts of strong women? Just curious how you come up with these
That
characters.
is a really, really good question. And I think that there's I don't know. It's difficult to I don't have a clear answer to it. It's one of those things where I do think that there's there were the sorts of characters I was always drawn to as a reader growing up, and and if there was something to these exhausted but powerful women that I have always been very drawn to in fiction. And and then on top of that, I know some very exhausted and powerful women in my day-to-day life. That is that it all connects. But it is something where I don't have a great answer to it. But it's a voice that feels that the characters come to me pretty fully formed, and I do think that there's and I think some of it is there's a bit of my mother and a lot of those characters, and also my sister. I don't know, that's a really, really good question, and I'm you can see I'm fishing at different answers, but it's
I like your description, exhaustive, powerful women, because that's
Yeah.
kind of how I am. That's
Yeah.
probably why I'm drawn to them. I'm very exhausted, I'm powerful in my work, and it's like I'm drawn to them. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
Yeah.
And another thing is I'm very, very grateful you have Substack, and I'm a Tiny Onion member. So I was just wondering if, Brian, you were going to bring up anything about Substack?
That's the next thing I'm going to do, since
All
we're,
right.
we're now entering hour 2 pretty close.
All right, let's do it.
Just, you know. So and then Kat, you were complaining that I was talking about numbers. Well, we're going to talk about numbers now. So if anybody doesn't want to hear the numbers conversations, this is the time to walk away.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to explain to me how this actually works or makes any sense in any kind of a real world. I cannot picture a world in which Substack can possibly be making enough money to pay you back for.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I'm probably not the one to ask about that,
Yeah.
honestly, because I've been incredibly lucky. Like, and so part of it is, like I mentioned, I created this, I built my Substack newsletter in the fall of 2019. And it was a free newsletter at the time. And, I used it because a handful of other comic creators were using it at the time. And I just I built my, it was my mailing list. It was just I was trying to build this mailing list. I was trying to funnel it all in, and I built up a really good following over, a few years where I had, different facets of my readership. I had a decent following from retailers through, I had a decent following from my readers, and I had a decent following from the collector's market that is, rampant around my books.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Substack reached out to me in shortly after this book launched, actually. And this was, and it was a deal that makes no sense. Still makes, it is just and I mean, these numbers are out there, so I'll talk the gross numbers for a second. Is they, were going to give me a $500,000 grant. It would be paid out in 4 chunks over the course of a year. For me to do 100 posts over the course of that year, which basically works out to 2 a week. And the goal would be for me to create comic content that would run through the site, but I would retain full creative control and ownership over everything that I did through the site. I, at that moment, had a few ideas that were in the back burner of my mind, which is I had seen particularly Scotty Young and a handful of other comic creators who had built a web store where they were handling their own merch and they were handling their own variant covers. That, and I had been in the system where it's I was I wasn't in a system where I was able to just fund the creation of my own variant covers and all of this stuff. So it was, aside from one every now and then, but it's just okay, can I partner with someone to build a new store and all this stuff, and basically build the infrastructure of something that even if when this deal dies out, could continue and be a good source of revenue for me, and also allow me to just make a cool thing when I wanted to do it. The biggest thing that I finally put out in the world is I wanted to make the version of the Erica Slaughter bandana that should have existed, and we had the neck gaiter that you have, but it's the actual bandana she wears in the comic. And it was one of those things where it's okay, yeah, no, I want to be able to build this. I knew that to add anything to my plate, something had to give. And I had already been considering stepping away from my DC contract. And this sped that up. I knew that I had just launched Nice House at 123, which was the third of my creator-owned titles that was selling in the 6 figures. I knew that like the future of what I wanted to do was in the creator-owned space. And, you know, the biggest issue in starting a creator-owned project is that startup capital. It is, how do you like build a book for, you know, 6 to 8 months before it comes out in stores without making a penny back on the back end. And it's just like, how do you make that safe? And this helped make that safe. And it was just like, and then on top of that, I was going to be able to like do a couple of things that had been in the back of my head for a while. Like I had this like lunatic idea for a long time that I wanted to do like these UFO stories that like with that would just basically be a kind of like nonfiction recounting of like stories of UFO encounters. And I talked about it with like Mike Omeng because both of us were UFO nuts. And it was just one of those things where it's like, but that wasn't like, you know, a company like, you know, like Image would have picked that up, but that's not like a seller on the same scale as my other books. Like it might sell because the last few things of me have sold, but it's not going to sell on its own in its own way. It has a smaller dedicated audience, but I still wanted to do that shit. Like, and so, you know, I took the deal. And it was, you know, like, and honestly, like 6 months into it, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to sort of like, you know, get anywhere close to the original number. But then I launched the store and I started doing the monthly drops and I started doing the, you know, releasing my own covers through that. And, you know, that has expanded the user base to the point where I'm making, you know, like 2/3 of my way through the year, I'm making 2/3 of the initial grant back.
Wow.
And
wow.
If
How many subscribers do you have?
I have
Roughly.
It's about 10,000 free subscribers, and that's the total number. I have about 2,000 paid subscribers, and about half of those are at my under half of those are at my premium tier,
right?
Which is they get like fancy gold covers.
Yeah.
So
the math on that is not that.
If honestly, if it goes up for the next 3 months the way it's been going up the last 3 months, I might hit the number by year 1.
Okay.
Like, and that'd be crazy.
Right.
Like, that's not what I was expecting to happen. Right. But it allows me to continue the projects that I was going through this, and you know.
No. If someone offers you $500,000 with no strings, you'd be an idiot not to do that. I totally love all of that. I just, you know, I worry about the moves that a lot of people have made, both with Substack, some of the Comixology stuff, where what ends up happening, it appears to me, is that material is being taken out of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we've talked about this before, that the ecosystem is very much built on getting all of these people buying the serialization, and then these number of people buying the book, and then these number of people the hardcover, and it's like a pyramid, right? Yeah. It's not a pyramid scheme, but it is a pyramid because that's how the mechanic works.
Yeah,
you laugh, but I've thought this through. And so I think that when you start pulling blocks out of that Jenga tower, right, you really run the risk of actually accelerating the collapse. Everyone who seems to talk about this publicly is always talking about how they're talking about how they were afraid that the market was going to crash and they were trying to find some other way around it.
Yeah.
But every step that's in there, including a lot of Kickstarter programs and all this stuff, is taking that material away from the market and taking away our ability to do it. And certainly we were talking about Kickstarter before. There's a couple of Kickstarters or Kickstarter-like crowdfunding things that look really like great projects to me, but when I look at the number of people who are supporting it, you know, it's a number that's not unlike 2000, which that book would sell so much better in print as an object. You know,
it's the issue is how do you it's who's willing to put the upfront money to get to that end state product, and that is the biggest problem that we're hitting. And also, what do you have to give up to get that? There is a, you know, right now, like people talk about Image is the only game in town for like pure creator-owned comics and the direct market space. And because of that, like you are, you know, you're a little bit at mercy to, you know, what are the trends of Image at a given moment, and their bandwidth. Yeah. Like, and you know, this is like, you know, the next couple of months are going to be really interesting because we are going to see the first wave of the Substack books like hit, including mine, The Closet, in stores in June. You know, which is like, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be very telling. But
how's it coming out? What is it coming out as serialized as a comic?
Yeah. It's like I
haven't gotten the solicitation yet.
That's fair. And you know, so it's the first time like it came out as 3 PDFs through my newsletter over the course of the last 3 months. And now in June, the first print issue will come out, and it'll be 3 print issues. It's in the format of like, you know, I did a trilogy of series of Boom years ago that were 3 oversized issues each, Mimetic, Cognatic, and it's kind of the and Eugenic. And this is kind of in that same mode where it's 3 oversized issues. I see it as like it's a horror novella, like it is, you know, a tight human horror story. And it's, you know, it's got Gavin Fullerton on art. It's real, like, I'm incredibly proud of it. You know, if you're a member of my Substack, you've gotten to see it early. And, you know, like you can read all 3 issues right now, but it's going to start coming out in single issues from Image in June. It'll run 3 months. It'll be collected probably in time for Halloween. Like, and that's how it's going to exist in the world.
Okay. Do you fear that some of the oxygen has been taken out of the room?
That's the test.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to see.
Yeah.
Like, because right now, like, this has been my test kitchen.
Right.
Like, I have the ability to, like, you know, use the test kitchen because I have, like, you know, I'm, like, right now, one of the big questions is like, what do I do with the next full-scale series that I have that I feel is on the same, like, you know, size as a Nice House on the Lake or something like that. And right now, I'm not sure that I would put that out through Substack first. What I might do is I might create some, like, special content that then runs as some sort of prologue or something like that, and create additional content that would run it side by side that. But I need to see what the audience is, and I need to see what it does to the print sales.
Yeah.
But what my newsletter gives me is it gives me direct communication with retailers. It gives me direct communication with my core fans, and it gives me a way to, you know, and the collector base. And you know, that has been incredibly valuable to me. And it's this is, you know, and this is still, it's the same newsletter that I've been sending since I started like back in 2019, that I got everyone on board for, you know, like, because Razor Blades was sold through Substack. Like it was a physical comic, but it was a physical and digital comic. They were both released simultaneously. I sold the digital stuff through, like, I didn't run it on the thing because they didn't have the capability to drop a PDF in it at the time. But it is one of those things. There's, like, I put in a link to Gumroad, or you could buy the physical copy. Like, and it was the, you know, like.
And how many physical copies did you sell?
I mean, like, you know,
understanding that you were fulfilling it out of your apartment.
Yeah. No, it was the first print run of the first issue was 500, and then the second print run of the first issue was 1,000, and then we stayed around like 1,000 to 2,000 per issue. So I mean, it's not that much, but it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, no, not going to give up a 6-figure selling
Sure.
comic,
Sure.
you know, like through this, but it is one of those things where it's the, you know.
Well, I guess my question would
Yeah.
then become: do you think that Razor Blades would have sold more copies had it been released in a more traditional way?
Maybe, but there's no. It being a scrappy, like, you know, it being a self-published project, I
Right.
think was part of what made it what it was.
Okay.
Like, this is the, I think there's a future iteration that I might partner with the publisher for it,
Mhm.
but it's like, I don't necessarily see that I would, you know, it would be something different round two.
Yeah.
Like, the first time around, the other thing is like the entire industry had stopped.
Yes.
Like,
No, that's fair. That's
you
fair.
know, so it's like I called a printer,
Sure.
found out if they could fulfill this,
Mhm.
like once they reopened, and you know, and then I took it from there.
Yeah. It's
Like-
so its physical incarnation now in the direct market is going to be as a $50 hardcover.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's a good format, a viable format?
I mean, this is like the end state format. It's
Yeah.
like the nice, like, you know, like the.
I guess this is part of what I'm questioning is like it feels like we kind of skipped a couple steps in the market, and it feels to me that the end state book only works if the earlier states, because as I said, it's in my head at least, it's a pyramid, right? And if it's a pyramid, if your base is smaller, then your tip is going to be lower or something. I don't
Sure.
whatever the math on that is, you know.
No, I see what you're saying. Like, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I just wanted the hardcover to exist.
Yeah.
Like, and
How'd your orders come in for it? Did your orders come in okay?
It's out in July, so we don't have orders yet. I don't think.
Oh, okay. I thought it'd been. No, it's been solicited.
It's been solicited, but I don't know the. I'd have to check my Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm not trying to make you feel bad about these choices. I'm just really curious about like if these things can work, because you know.
I mean, like, to be perfectly blunt, when I came up with the idea of Razor Blades, we didn't think printers were going to be open and all of that. I made the decision 1 week before we launched the thing, and it's just like, what if we did a print version of this?
Yeah.
And then I called the printer to see if we could fulfill it.
Right.
And that first print run cost way more than it needed to, and then we found a second printer for the second print run, and then managed to like make it, and then realized like, oh, if we actually print twice as many, the cost is better. And it's like, you know, I learned a lot about distribution. I learned about a lot about all this shit, which was part of the point. I wanted to know how each step of it was, but I don't like asking publishers permission to do the sorts of projects that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I like, it's one of those things where like I've always, like, when I see the thing that I want to make it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to figure out where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one of those things where going to Image at a certain point, especially it's like, you know, before the launch of Department of Truth, and be like, you know, like, hey, Eric Stevenson, can I do an 80-page horror anthology and run it through Image?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, fully creator owned and all of that, and I'm going to just like throw all the upfront money together myself, and, you know, see if we can make something cool.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he like might have said yes, but during that summer,
Right.
like, I bet I wouldn't have gotten a response to that email.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
So, you know, I went my own way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there were a million things I could have done much smarter about, like, Razor Blades, but the whole point was me figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, selling the first issue out of my apartment was one of the dumbest like decisions that I've ever, like, fulfilling that is just the biggest nightmare.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, and then I got help for, you know, 2 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's also one of those things where like what I am incredibly proud of is we were able to pull together like an incredible like range of creators from, you know, like from every corner of comics. It's just like we had like illustration by Tilly Walden. We had you know, multiple pieces by Josh Simmons, who usually works in like the you know, Fantagraphics, like drawing quarterly side of the aisle. Like, you know, on top of like, you know, folks like Ram V and like all this stuff where it's just like I wanted to focus on like, you know, these up and coming horror creators who are just making so much cool shit. And then on top of that, it was also discovering so many horror illustrators. And the amazing thing is that since using them in Razor Blades, a bunch of the companies that found them as cover artists, like David Romero, you know, like was someone that I didn't know about before we started the Razor Blades project. And, you know, then we brought him in to do like a whole issue of Department of Truth. And like he's now getting like cover work at every, you know, comic company because he just does these incredibly spooky covers. He's like lightning fast too. I don't know. It's and it just also, you know, the other thing is like the utility of that book more than sales. Like the goal was always like, I hope I make enough from this that I don't lose a tremendous amount of money making this. But the goal more than anything was we weren't going to have conventions for a year. And I wanted to have like a project that I could like, you know, talk to a bunch of these like up and coming creators that it's like I really like and admire and be like, hey, you want to go have fun together? Do you want to jam on this thing? Those goals were wildly more important to me. Than figuring out the best like sales ladder. And it's just like in a perfect world, what I would probably have done in terms of like we'll release this deluxe hardcover and then I'm sure we'll see if there's like a more standard thing down the line. But the other thing is that similar to other you know, the rights structure of all of this, it's like every time we reprint this, we need to get everyone's permission. Everyone who is a part of any of these things. Which is the like, you know, it's a big pain in the ass. And you know, like I'm gonna have to do like if we make any money on this, I'm gonna have to do some awful like algebra to figure out how to like, you know, send everyone a $5 like check. But it's the, you know, like that's the shit you kind of figure out and you know, like yeah, and just sort of like find your way through. So
you said you were using it as a way to learn lessons, other than, oh my God, packing 500 packages out of my apartment is really, really much harder than it sounds. Because it sounds like 500. That's nothing. I can do 500 in my sleep. You think in your head, and then when you're faced with the reality of actually packaging up 500 things, woo, that's a lot of stuff. It's crazy.
And this is why now that I'm doing, you know, like having a variant cover with a print run of about 1,000, like if that sells to, you know, that's the thing I figured out is I needed to partner with someone with a warehouse and a distribution team, which is why, you know, I started having conversations with Steve Anderson at Third Eye Comics, like pretty much from the get-go. He was a huge supporter of Razor Blades from day one, in one of our largest orders. Like him and Forbidden Planet UK were our two largest like sources of you know, sales every issue. But it's that's the biggest thing I learned is that if I'm going to have any kind of fulfillment organization, how like I knew the scale of what I needed, because even my like stopgap scale was, you know, I was working with John Jesperson, you know, who like is an art rep for like Doug Monkey and Pat Gleason. And he's like a great guy, and he was like a tremendous help. But it was definitely one of those things where he had the scale up. You know, he had like 5 scales up from where I was at in terms of like selling it out of my, you know, shipping it out of my, you know, bedroom. But it was just like, you know, he had the scale of the operation he had to do for this was also like, you know, monumental. And it was like, okay, like I need, if I any hope of scaling up or even doing this more than quarterly,
Mm-hmm.
like I need more resources
Mhm.
and I need I need, I need scale.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing it taught me.
Yeah.
And it also taught me it's just like, how long does something take to get somewhere from a printer? Like, and I mean, this was a bad year to like estimate that because
Sure.
everything being shipped
Sure.
everywhere was like a total shit show.
Yep.
But it was like, that was a huge thing, which also like, it helped me like, yeah, it was direct communication with retailers. It was realizing how to distribute something,
Mhm.
And the resources needed to
Mhm.
properly distribute something. It was,
Does it-
maintaining communications with all of these creators
Yeah.
and like staying engaged, and also it taught me how to like, it reminded me how to hand sell something, hand sell through my newsletter,
Right.
Like, and it was just like, okay, how to do a drop, like,
Mhm.
and how to do that in a way that seemed fair.
Mhm.
Like, because you can't surprise someone with a drop. You have to
Mhm.
kind of let them know it's coming. So it's
Mhm.
just the people who really want it can be there.
Mhm.
And it's just like, and I made every mistake,
Mhm.
like through all of that. But by making every mistake, now then when I had the opportunity to do the scale up of like, okay, now we're shipping, because the other thing I was doing at the exact same time that is I made enamel pins for Department of Truth. And I hand shipped over the course of a year 3,000 pins around the country. And that I did continue to do out of my apartment because I could just do these little bubble mailers.
Yeah.
And I would just pop one in the bubble mailer and I would just ship them off. I got a label printer, stuck them out. That was easy.
Mhm.
Like a book, like requires more than a bubble mailer and like, more steps.
Mhm.
But even that got overwhelming and it would
Mhm.
build up and I would have deadlines and then I would be 2 weeks behind on shipping things out and then people would be like sending angry emails.
Mhm.
And it's just like, that taught me that there's enough of a demand to sell 3,000 of these.
Mhm.
Like, and not everything's going to sell on that level because, the standard logo thing is always going to be but it's all been really good and interesting to learn. And
Yeah, I mean, especially for something like that, where if you're selling 3,000 of them, I mean, I think that actually suggests that there's probably demand for 15,000 out there.
Oh yeah,
if they're actually getting out there, and getting distributed and getting, where you're not hand packing them in your living room is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
No, 100%. And now
the retailer is a magnifying glass. I think,
no, I completely agree.
You've got to be the sunlight, but we've got the lens to make
but there's also like
analogy worked, but
but there's also a like buying something direct.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Is like it's the difference between it's like the specialty product and the mass product, and it's like they have different demands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about collectors and the things that they demand.
Okay.
Because that's different than a reader in many ways.
Yeah. No, it's and one thing that I've been very proud of is I've like I feel like I've managed to capture a bunch of collectors and turn them into readers of my stuff, which I very deeply appreciate. But it is one of those things where I find the entire collector market really deeply fascinating. And, I'm a different kind of collector. I am not looking for like pristine graded things, but I'm a pack rat. And I think a lot of nerds are pack rats. And, I definitely spent my pandemic going through eBay, and especially while I was working on Razor Blades, I was picking up like 1980s horror anthologies, and a lot of like small press comics that have been out of print for years. And then I found my small community of creator friends where it's like I'm messaging and it's like, oh, did you just see there's 2 of these things up at eBay for half the cost that they're normally at and all of that, and it's like we're sending messages. And I don't see it. The current collector market is hugely different. from that kind of activity. I think that there's a, you know, I don't know. I see it as like more like, I don't know. It's like a dad hobby, like that I keep saying, where it's just like, you know, like, because I've met a bunch of these guys, and like a lot of them are guys, and a lot of them are sort of in their like, you know, 40s and 50s, and they are, you know, and they're on a Facebook group or a few Facebook groups, and then on top of being on that, they've got about 5 to 10 close friends, and they have the, you know, speed dial of every comic retailer in like 50-mile radius or 100-mile radius of where they live.
Right.
And, you know, they figure out what's the, like, you know, coolest book that's going to come out that week, or the book that's going to have the most value. And then they go and they like spend an entire like Wednesday or like a Saturday or whatever. And then they just like, they'll visit like 5 different comic shops to see if they like have like one extra copy hidden behind a thing. And all of that, and it's like, you know, and then they go home and they put it all into spreadsheets and all this shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is like, you know, and the community of it is the center of the, like, why they're all doing it. And it's like, I meet these people at every convention.
Yeah.
Where, you know, there's always the guy who's been doing it for like, you know, 5 years.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 guys with him where it's just like, oh, he just brought me to the show, and it's just like, this looks pretty cool. Tell me, like, who's this, like, Eric Slaughter? And then it's like, oh, Pigeon's like, that sounds pretty cool, man. Like, and it's the only corner of, like, you know, I don't want to say the only corner, but it's a corner of the industry where I see a growth in community, and community is like something that I think that we are seeing so much less of in so many different corners of comics, where I like, that feels like valuable. And it's like, they also drive me fucking crazy. Like, it's one of those things where, you know, like, I put out some rare covers and all that stuff, and it's like, everyone always like, you know, I did these 2 foil variants of Department of Truth #1 that, you know, I sold through my Gumroad site when that launched, and, you know, and I held on to, like, you know, it was a print run. I think it was a print run of 250 each, and I sold like 150 of them, and I held on to 100 of each. And then I sold like most of the rest of that 100 over the like following year at like conventions. And then like, but I still like will get people like sending me like, oh, come on, you have to be able to have just one. And it's just like, come on, like, I don't. Like, I have 15 copies of each of them, and I'm keeping them.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I just worry. I worry that it's deforming actual publishing.
Sure.
That publishers are taking actions. I'm not ascribing any ill motivation to you. You understand?
Yeah.
But publishers appear to be taking actions to try to tap this base in a way that is changing what they're willing to publish and how they're willing to publish it.
Sure.
And I find that to be dangerous at best and disheartening in so many ways that I mean, it looks to me like there's really a meaningful number of comics that are being published right now that would not be published if it wasn't for the fact they have 5+ covers.
Sure.
And that doesn't seem like a healthy thing for this industry. In fact, I can say with certainty that kind of thing has almost destroyed comics twice. The Black and White bust and then the Valiant, you know, Wizard bust, you know. And so I worry about it. I think
those worries are fair. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that I think that, it's whether we're looking at the symptom or the cause of the thing. Where I think we are, yes, there are always going to be opportunistic, moves made by publishers to try to make the most money that they can. And, I think that there is a value question with comics that we run into over and over and over again, which is the fact that we're asking people to spend about $5 on a 22-page
I don't think I don't think there's a value question when the work is good.
Yeah,
I think that there's zero value question to this.
I appreciate
okay, and it's not just because you're sitting here, but I would hold a book like this up as an example.
Sure.
Many things in this store. There's plenty of stuff that is a real value question.
Sure.
But that's because there's no heart going into it. You know, I just when I see you were talking about how these guys are in groups and they go around to different stores and they buy up the inventory, and what that does is that takes copies out of the hands of actual readers. Right, and it makes it harder for readers to participate. I mean, you don't have to answer for those sins.
Yeah,
no. You certainly didn't create this.
No.
I just I because it strikes me that there's a reasonable amount of the success of both Something's Killing the Children and Department of Truth is wrapped around these things, and yes, the books are still selling well, so that means that it's not all false, but I wonder the messages that it's sending to the publishers. I wonder what the messages that it's sending to other creators who then think that they have to have 5 covers on their book. And, once you have 5 covers on your book, you can't ever not have 5 covers because you immediately lose 20% of your sales or whatever. Right. I don't know. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's, and I think they're really, really good questions.
Yes.
I certainly don't have the answers. I don't know that. I think that there are more bottom-up problems about the quality of the standard book being published, but the median book being published at a company. And I also think that we have serious problems of lost readership, and I think that has come from the biggest publishers chasing the wrong decisions that were made back when I was in high school shrank the possibility of the readership pool today. And and is why most people my age are, and I'm turning 35 later this year. But most people my age or younger read more manga than comics.
Sure.
And, and it is because, and it's, once again, it's the value question still, where it's for the cost of 2 comic books, you get a full, something meatier that you hold in your hands, that, then you can read in a clean, volumes 1 through 20, and understand how that goes. And I think that, yes, and then I think on top of it, because there's a loss of core readers who are just there every single week picking up all of these books, there's also a loss of the community of readers. And in losing the community of readers, you lose one of the central things where it's you want to stay up with all of your books because that's how you stay a part of that community.
Right.
So, do I think that there's do I think that we're living in a healthy market right now? No. I really don't. I don't necessarily, and it's just and this could be very much confirmation bias, and it's also this is a group that has been very humanized to me because I sit like I meet 500 of them like,
Sure.
at every show. But it is one of like, you know, but they are asking me questions of what happens in the next issue and shit like that. So it is something where I don't know. I don't think the answer of like making the healthy market is going to come in, you know, shutting down an active community that's funneling like
That's fair.
money into the space.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that there needs to be like a ground up push towards like making more products that like, you know, weekly readers want to read that through the, you know, periodical side of the comics business?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I absolutely do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is like a big problem.
Okay. I'm gonna leave it there
All right.
because there's we're it's late at this point. Okay, so let's wrap this up. The we usually wrap it up with two questions, and one of them is there something else you want to plug? You've been really doing a fantastic bit of that throughout this whole thing. In fact, I even feel scooped that there's going to be more. That there's going to be 2 more seasons of this.
Oh, yeah.
I had not heard that at all, and
Yeah.
and that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. So buy
That's
all
very
my
exciting.
books.
Yes, I'm down with that. Is there anything that you haven't plugged yet that you would
I think
like
we've
to
kind
plug?
of got, I think
Yeah.
we've gotten
Yeah.
to like every
I tried to
every
be comprehensive.
corner
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Oh, it's yeah.
Okay. All right. Then the last question is always is this is a series of interviews.
Yeah.
We're somewhere in the 200s with this. We get a lot of people who watch this series who want to make comics.
Yeah.
And don't know how to start or don't know what to do or just don't have confidence maybe. So if there was a piece of advice that you were going to give someone coming into comics today, right now, whether it's about how to approach work philosophically or whether it's something more on the business side of how you find your market and address your market, what might that piece of advice be?
That's a really good question. I think that, you know, the 2 biggest pieces of advice that I have to people who really want to be a part of this lunatic business are, you know, first and foremost is you have to find your people. You need to find like the creators or the people who are reading the stuff that you're reading, the people who value what you value in stories. And you have to talk about it, and you have to pick those stories apart, and you have to like figure out what makes them work for you. That and being a part of like a community of people, it's like even if they're not all reading comics, like this could be, you know, you could be reading books, you could be watching movies or TV shows, like, you know, like you need to like dig in and engage in the stuff that matters to you. I'd say the second like part of that is like you have to indulge your curiosity. When you think you're going down some weird rabbit hole and you're just because you're fascinated in the thing, follow that rabbit hole. At the bottom of that rabbit hole is an idea. And that's where the good ideas are. The good ideas happen when you follow your like, you know, your deepest curiosities toward their, you know, limit, and they, you know, you find like pieces of information that you would never like information that you've seen before presented in a way you've never seen before, and it's going to make 2 things click in your head, and then you're going to be like, well, what if a character went up against that? And then that's a story. You know, the third thing I'd say is, you know, once you start writing those stories, it's like you do need to, you know, go back to that first group of people you're talking about, all that, share the work that you're doing, find the people who want the same end goal as you, and you know, and then like share your work, get better, like make each other better. And then when one of you, because you're all fighting to get into this like tiny little industry, when one of you gets like pulled up into the industry, you want to reach back down and lift the next person up with you. Because there's nothing more important in like comics is like it's having the people with you and having the people who value what you want to make, and then we'll make more things like the stuff you want to make, and then you like it's like a game of Risk. Then you start like expanding on the board, and then I guess the final thing that I'd say, and this is like once you've gotten started, and it's like is know who you want your audience to be, and sell to them. There's, I think, a lot of people see, just sort of see themselves as a kind of like, oh yeah, anyone who likes this, that'd be great. And that's not how anything works. Like, you need to know, like, okay, this idea, like, is kind of similar to like this other sort of thing that is like sold such and such before. So that's how I can sort of identify it. Okay, this is the audience. This is the like rough size of the audience, and that's what I'm going after. And that is a skill that too many creators don't have, that I think is incredibly valuable. And it's not about right to the whatever, like, don't identify what the biggest audience is and then make something that you don't care about to try to go after that audience. That never works. What you need to do is figure out the thing you want to tell and find the audience for that idea, and then sell it to as many people in that audience as you have the ability to sell it to. That is, that's the business of like comics.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. You were saying earlier that the business side is very messed up, and I agree with you. And yet at the same time, I am more happy and excited to sell comics today than I was 10 years ago, and than I was 10 years before that. It gets better. The market gets better in many ways. It's opening up. There's so much opportunity. This is a golden age as far as comics have never been better.
Yeah,
comics have the content has never been better, and the bar just keeps raising up, and it's really fantastic. And I have to thank you for adding to it with this. I feel like this is one of the strongest works you've ever done in a very strong career.
Thank you.
And I really sincerely think that. And if you're sitting there at home and you don't know what to read, that's a book. That's a book that you should be reading. I want to thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I want to thank my son Ben for running the show. I want to thank Kat and Katie and Zoe for running the store so that I can fuck around and talk about theory about comics rather than actually do work, because they do all the work and look awesome while doing it. I want to thank everybody who came here to the meeting. Give yourselves a round of applause, please. I know that was really long. Hopefully you were entertained. I want to thank everybody who's a member of the club. And I want to thank Jordan, who's our producer, for running things from behind the stage that nobody else sees. Thank you so much. Upcoming things. Next month's graphic novel, the month club for the adult club. I don't have a copy of it. They didn't show up yet. We're supposed to be distributing them on the 1st, and we haven't gotten our copies yet. We're supposed to have them by Saturday, though. So I can't hold up the book, but it's Walk Me to the Corner by Nelly Furmark. She lives in Sweden, and it is a really, really interesting story about a 50-year-old woman who falls in love outside of her marriage. And you don't really see comics like that being told in the market. I'm really excited for everybody to be able to read this book next month. So look for that. Our kids club pick for this coming month is Cloud Town by Daniel McCloskey. Daniel's going to be here in 3 weeks, something like that, and we'll do another one of these live shows. And then our classic graphic novel of the month club will be All-Star Superman. I am holding out hope that Grant Morrison is actually going to answer the email that was put out to him. But you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. That's the next couple of shows. I hope you can be part of it. Thank you all, and we'll talk to you next month.